My name's Polly Pistol, and I'm an alcoholic. By God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since April the 11th of 1977. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Woo-hoo! Yeah, that's good news. I have a home group, and that's the West Connect group in Jacksonville, Florida. We meet on Monday night at 7 o'clock. And if you're ever in Jacksonville, Florida, just give us a call and we'll take you to a meeting. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor, and I sponsor. And those are the things that I need to be a member in good standing in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just want to thank a whole bunch of people for Dave and I being able to come to this roundup this weekend. I want to thank Alan. Alan called us about 2 years ago and said, I want you there for the 50th. And I can't believe I'm here at your 50th anniversary. 50 years. Wow. Just fabulous. And what I love is Dave and I were here 10 years ago. And so was Don Majors. So we're all back again for the 50th. So that is fantastic. I'd like to thank Barry. Barry was Dave's and our host, and he picked us up at the airport. He has been an outstanding host, and I thank him so much. And I'm going to thank David Martin. I'm going to thank Jane and the people that have really helped us do some stuff. Dave is recovering from lung cancer surgery. And so I've had help. Jane's brought him coffee this morning, and I wasn't feeling well last night, so she escorted him to the banquet. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. We just get in here and we help everybody. And what's really exciting is just seeing all the people that I haven't seen in a really, really long time. That's just, we're always here. I'm just running into people that I haven't seen in 30 years that are at this conference this weekend. I mean, gosh, it's amazing. I just am so honored. And I don't know if anybody else has commented, but I love this banner. I think this banner is outstanding. 50 years in Sin City? Wow. That's fabulous. So, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that I should share in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what I'm trying to be like today. And I'm going to do that to the very best of my ability. But I'm going to take about 3 minutes to preach. I'm going to do a little bit of preaching. And one of the things is that I am 39 years of sober. And I want you to know at 39 years of sobriety, I am busier in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous than I have ever been. I sponsor more people than I have ever sponsored, and I'm into more service than I've ever been into. And I have a really good reason for that, a really selfish reason, if you want to know the truth. And that is because I love my life. I absolutely love the life that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. My big book tells me that I have a progressive illness. If I have a progressive illness, as is described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, then at 39 years of sobriety, I am more alcoholic than I was when I got here. So at 39 years of sobriety, I don't need less meetings. I need more meetings. I don't need less service. I need more service. I don't need to sponsor less people. I need to sponsor more people. I hear all the time, well, I've done my part. Now it's somebody else's time. Boy, I haven't done my part. I have not done my part. I have a job in my home group. And you know what? If I don't get voted into something, then I'm a greeter. But I'm going to have a job in my home group because I'm going to be a part of it. Not for any other reason than I want to stay sober. Because one of the things I was told a long time ago, the further you get from the drink, the closer you get to the drink. And I don't know when's the last time you've seen somebody with long-term sobriety go out and drink. But it's a really very, very horrible thing. And what's really sad is most of the time, the ego will not release to let the person back. So what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I do what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says. And it tells me I get a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance, but says I got to do something. I got to maintain my sobriety of my spiritual condition. So I don't want to forget that. And so if you're new here today, this isn't a come in here, just to stay a few days, get sober. One of the things I love about what Clancy says, he says, if alcoholism had, if detox centers had anything to do with alcoholism, they'd send out well people. Alcoholism is a disease, and it's a progressive disease, and we keep on having it. So I just want you to know that I'm an alcoholic. I'm a real alcoholic. I'm alcoholic every day. And every day I have to treat my alcoholism. I'm living, breathing proof that you can be an alcoholic as described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the doctor's opinion and not come from the disease of alcoholism. I do not come from the disease of alcoholism. My grandfather drank, but he was the only one in our family who drank. So I will assure you he never drank like me, but he was the only one that drank. But we were raised Southern Baptists. Now, when I come to places like Las Vegas, and I've lived in Southern California, and I've lived in Washington State, they're not real too sure what Southern Baptist is. I live in Florida now. They got it. They know what it is. They know what it is. So I was raised Southern Baptist. And no Southern Baptist says, thou shalt not drink. And I guarantee you my parents didn't drink. And I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I knew about a God. But I tell you, it was nothing like the God I have today. That God that I learned about in that Southern Baptist church, I can still see those preachers standing up at that podium. And I'm telling you, their faces were red and their veins were sticking out, and they were screaming into the audience, "You're born a sinner. You're going to burn in hell." And I'm telling you, that did not sound like any kind of God I thought was going to be a lot of fun to be around. And that kind of God was with me until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I lived in absolute terror that somehow I would never, ever be good enough for God. My conception of God today, and on page 29, it says that we talk about from our own story and from our own point of view, how we formed a relationship with God. And I hope when I finish today that you'll know that I have formed a relationship with God. Because what I believe today, that is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. And whether that is whatever you call God, Bill calls God a lot of different names in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He calls him the Spirit of the universe, great spirit, realm of spirit, all kinds of different names. It does not matter what you call God. To me, it's God. That's what I was brought up with. That's what I call God today. All I know is there is a power today that I answer to. And I am so grateful that I found that power in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I did not come from the disease of alcoholism. Also, I am an only child. And I am not a child. I'm one of these people that has come into Alcoholics Anonymous who was loved and cherished and cared for. When I went to treatment for the first time, and you sit in group and people start telling their war stories and things that, most of all, what they would talk about is all these terrible things that happened to little boys and girls. And I would listen to that, and I would hear these awful, tragic things that had happened. And I would say, well, I know why you're an alcoholic, but why am I an alcoholic? Because those things did not happen to me. And I know today that the disease of alcoholism is an equal opportunity illness. It can hit somebody who is homeless on the streets, or it can hit a president's wife. It really doesn't matter. It's a disease like any other disease that just, if I don't know why I have it and somebody else doesn't, all I know is that I have it. And I have a way out, which used to be what that's one of the words they were thinking about for our big book, a way out. I have a way out. I have a way out to have a happy and fabulous life by being in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and doing the things that we're talking about doing here. The triangle, having unity and service, and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are the basis of our triangle. What happened for me is I did not come from any kind of wealth or anything. My dad had a 9th grade education, and what happened is my parents wanted to give me everything any little girl could have. They didn't have a lot of money. And I saw me, when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I started working these steps, I got to see that I was that selfish, self-centered, self-seeking person from the get-go. Here I was, a cherished, loved child. And I'm not sure I even knew that. I'm not sure I even really felt that. But what happened is my mother would sit up and they would work hard. She would sit up at night and make me dancing costumes and clothes to wear. She would make me beautiful clothes. And I would look at her and say, I don't want those clothes. I want store-bought clothes like other kids have. And my mother worked. I'm 76 years old. Believe me, when I was a little girl, mothers didn't work. But my mother worked, and I didn't like that. I didn't like to have to go to a babysitter's or somebody's house to stay. I wanted to go home like the other kids did. There was always this thing of I was just restless, irritable, and discontent, and never satisfied with anything. Today, I see how much my parents sacrificed for me. And as a child, I had absolutely no appreciation for that. At 18 years old, I married an Air Force officer, and I had married a bomber pilot. And this man was going to be gone, and he was going to be gone for years at a time. And I was going to have to learn to be responsible for myself. And I'm here to tell you, I have never wanted to be responsible for myself. I am one of these people. In Texas, we call it puffing up. I was born and raised in Texas, and we call it puffing up, and somebody says, what's wrong? Nothing. But the truth is that you're supposed to find out what's wrong with me and make me happy. And if you don't love me. I love what Clancy says. Clancy says we're people who have to be treated special just to feel average. And when you don't treat us special, we feel rejected. It's just something inside of me that needs more. It's just like I can't ever get enough. It's just something in here always needs something. But by God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, year by year, my bucket gets more and more full. And for that, I'm grateful. One of the things that I think is absolutely amazing is how an alcoholic can remember their first drink. I wonder if non-alcoholics remember their first drink. I don't know. But all I know is I can remember my first drink. And what had happened is we had been in the military a few weeks, and I'd gotten this invitation in the mail, and it was from the base commander's wife, and it had a big red mandatory stamped on it, and which meant that I was supposed to show up for whatever this coffee that she was having. And I am a person who's always had these feelings, overwhelming feelings of inadequacy. Never felt like I measured up. I haven't ever figured out being behind this podium, because I am the kid in school who would absolutely get sick if I had to get up and stand up and do a book report or anything like that. And lo and behold, here I am behind podiums. That's just Alcoholics Anonymous, just being willing to do whatever AA asks you to do. And what happened anyway, I got invited to this coffee. And I just knew all these women. Here I am, the ripe old age of 18. And I just knew these women were going to be sophisticated and they were going to be educated. And I'm none of those. And I believe you can be and do anything you want to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I still don't have an education, but I think that I think that you can have those things. You can have anything you want to. I am just one of these people that has always wanted letters after my name, but I've just never wanted to go to school. It's just, I'm the kind of person that wants a title, but I don't want to do the work. And so what happened is I go to this coffee, and here this woman is telling us all the things that we're going to do to enhance our husband's career, how we're going to attend the right dinner parties, how we're going to have the right dinner parties, and all the functions we will attend. And I am sitting there absolutely mortified. I left that coffee that day and started buying every book on etiquette I could find. I'm a hick from Texas. I didn't even know where the forks went. And here, this is the life that I'm supposed to have. And I was just absolutely terrified. About 2 weeks later, there is an officer's wives luncheon. And of course, I'm expected to attend that. And I go to this luncheon. And what happens is there's a long table, just like there is here. And on that table is a fountain. And there's little glasses on the table. And I'm watching these ladies, and they're picking up the glass, and they're putting it under that fountain. And they're taking a drink. And what I did is I got a glass, and I put it under that table, under that fountain. I'm here to tell you that my first drink was really a wussy drink. It was sherry. But I put that glass under that fountain. I took that glass of alcohol. And I can tell you, I feel that today. I feel the way it felt. It was so warm going down. I can just feel it. And it just sort of warmed up my whole chest. And I was always this kid that was just always so uptight, just wound tighter than a drum, just so uptight. And it just seemed like I took that drink and I could just take a breath. I could just take a breath. And I put my glass up under there again, and I took another drink. Now, I didn't get drunk that day, but I know today that something happened to me that day that may or may not have happened to anybody else in that room. But what happened to me today is that day was that drink gave me that feeling that's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the doctor's opinion. It gave me that feeling of ease and comfort. And always it gave me that feeling. Now, I didn't become an alcoholic right away, or I'm sure that, once you put the alcohol to it, whatever gene I've got or whatever it is in us, I'm not sure. Everybody's got some idea of what's wrong with us, and nobody still knows. But whatever it was, it had lit that fire. Now, what I was going to do is I was going to do that again and again and again and again. What ended up happening for us is we ended up being stationed at a place called Loring Air Force Base, Maine. And I should have known that this place was going to be difficult, because the first thing they do is they issue us these parkas with all this fur around it that you can barely see out of. And it's going to go, it's going to start going down to about 40 or 50 below zero. And we're going to be under a chill factor 5 many, many times while we're stationed at that base. And I have 2 little boys. And I'm here to tell you, I had no clue what to do with those 2 little boys. I had no parenting 101. I had no idea what to do with these little boys. And I couldn't send them out to play. I mean, it was just, I was stuck with these 2 little boys. I had no patience. I was just one of these people who had no patience. I am a woman who never, ever should have had children. I am so grateful for my sons today, but I brought my children through the biggest nightmare that any 2 little boys could ever go through, and that was the disease of alcoholism. I drugged those 2 little kids through that. And I could say, I did that. My husband was gone. Those children were left in my care, and I was incapable of taking care of them. And I was just having a nervous breakdown every 20 minutes, and I ended up going to an Air Force doctor, and they said, take these. And from 1962 until 1977, when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I took Librium and Valium and Seconal and Nembutal and drank alcohol. And I'm here to tell you, if you do that, you're not an active alcoholic. I am not somebody who was having a good time at the parties and all that. I just did my dying on my living room sofa. Now, I don't know if any of you have had to do this, but one of the things that was going on in the military is it was not acceptable for women, and especially officers' wives, to be drunk and disorderly. So what would happen is I would sit at a dinner party or whatever we were at and just try to sip and just feel, the hair on my neck still stands up today, just to try to sip and just try not to drink. And then just get home and just fall to my knees in the liquor cabinet and just take a bottle and hold it. Just dying so bad. That phenomena of craving is overwhelming. One of the things that I don't have a lot of fun stories to talk about my drinking. I have a woman I sponsor, and she had an affair with a one-legged preacher, and that's kind of stuff I want. I wanted to have a lot, a story with a lot of fun in it. That's not my story. My story is I did my dying on my living room sofa, and I drugged 2 little boys through the disease of alcoholism. And what happened is my story is a story of child abuse, child neglect, all the things that you can do to a child to send them a message that you are of no value. And that's who I am. I'm a woman who never should have had those kids, because those kids were left with me. Their dad was gone. He was not there to protect them in any way from my rage, from my physical abuse, from my emotional abuse, and from my blatant neglect. I have a son who's 32 years sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I've had the opportunity to hear my son speak. And I get to know a lot about my story that I didn't get to know about. But one of the things that I love is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the family afterwards, it talks about that anybody who lives with a practicing alcoholic is affected by the disease of alcoholism. And my 2 boys have been traumatized by a disease called alcoholism. And one of the things that I know today is, and in that book also, because I'm going to talk about some amends, in that book, it also says in that same chapter that the head of the household caused most of the problems and cannot even the score in this lifetime. I can't even the score in this lifetime. And what happens is thanks to good sponsorship and to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, we've had a walk through with and recovery from all of this. And I'm going to start by about some of the stories that happen. When you're living in an alcoholic family, what happens is I can't show up. I can't show up for my kids. And what happens is I have one son who's a musician. I have one son who is an athlete. And I say, I'll be at your concert. I'll be at your game. But see, what happens for me is I always take a drink of alcohol. And what happens is I pass out on the sofa. And I come to, and these 2 little faces are looking at me. And they're saying, Mom, you promised. And then I start raging at them. Can't you see I'm sick? You're just so selfish. You don't care about me. And I blame them for my alcoholism and make them responsible. That's what happens in alcoholic homes. And that's what happens to our children. My youngest son, I've heard him speak many times. And one of the things that he talks about is his reality. He talks, this is my reality from having grown up in an alcoholic home. And he always says, I can't tell my story without telling a little bit of my mother's story. And what he talks about is being a little boy, about 10 years old. Now, I can no longer put my children to bed at night, and I cannot get up and get their breakfast, make their lunches, or anything like that. They have to set an alarm and get up and go to school. So he gets up that morning, and what he sees in the kitchen is his mother passed out on the floor with a drink spilled. What he does is he steps over me, he gets a bowl of cereal, he gets the bowl, the cereal, the milk, puts it all together, makes sure he puts it all back in the cabinet and the refrigerator. God forbid he leave anything out, because I would be raging about that. Steps back over me, sits at the kitchen table, and eats his breakfast and feels nothing, because that's his reality. That is an abnormal reaction to that scene. But that is his reality. My oldest son is the one who took care of me. And many is the time I've come to with my oldest son screaming at me, Mom, wake up, are you dead? And me to come to and see the fear in his eyes. And for 39 years, I haven't had to see that kind of fear in anybody's eyes because of something I'm doing. And for that, I've been overpaid in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. What I'm grateful for is I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell this little story before I talk about getting sober. But what I have always had good sponsorship. And what happened for me is I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got a man who had been a Monsignor priest and a captain in the Navy. And he had left the priesthood to marry an Asian woman. And what happened is he looked at me and he said, Polly, you're going to go make amends to those boys. How do you do that? How do you go make amends for that? And he had me write stuff out on a 3x5 card. And he says, you write these things out, because if an amends is emotionally charged, if you don't write it down, you can't always get it out. And so I wrote it down, and I went to my son's, and he had me write out another card. And on that card, he had me write, "I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I will be the very best mom I can be for the rest of your life, or the rest of my life." And I gave those amends, and then I asked them, did they have anything to say to me? And my sons were 14 and 16 when I got sober, and they had a lot to say to me. I felt like I'd been shot with an Uzi as they started firing everything and how mad they were and how they felt. And every time they'd fire something, I'd say what Frank had me write. "I am so sorry that happened to you, and I'll spend the rest of my life being the very best mom I can be." I'm so grateful that I've had that kind of direction. I'm so grateful that that has been what's happened for me. I'm just going to tell you real quick, I don't have, like I said, I don't have one of these great drinking stories besides what I did to my two sons. I did all my affairs sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, so we don't have it. We don't have any of that. And what happened is I ended up having a car wreck in Irving, Texas, right where the Dallas Cowboys play football. Or they don't anymore, but they did. And I had a car wreck, and I totaled my car. In Texas, you have these turnarounds, and as I was going around this turnaround, I hit that bridge above me. And what I did is I walked to a payphone. Now, I know you young people don't have any idea what that is, but I walked to a payphone, and I called the police and told them my car had been stolen. And here comes the police with my husband. And I'm taken to the Irving police station. And I get to see that look on the non-alcoholic's face who just doesn't understand why we do the things we do. And this policeman looked at my husband with so much disgust, and he says, "Why don't you just take her home and sober her up?" And on the way home, he said, "Polly, there's a treatment center, and it's not far from our house, and I wish you would go." And I entered treatment that night for the first time. And this was a 7-day county detox. This was no fancy jitter joint. And while I was in there, one of the things I'm here to tell you is I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not even know another alcoholic. I didn't know anybody else who was alcoholic. I really didn't know what alcoholic was or what alcoholism was. I just didn't know anybody else who was alcoholic. I don't know of anybody in the military where all those years we were there that's in AA. I don't know of anybody who's here or anybody who needs to be here. I have no one. So I knew nothing about the disease of alcoholism. But I'll tell you this, we'd gather up at night and, they tell those war stories. I didn't have any of those stories. I mean, I was too ashamed of what had been happening with my drinking. I'm not about to talk about it, but I'm telling you, there were people in there who'd been divorced. There were people in there that had been to jail. There are people who had been to prison. And I'm telling you, I loved these stories. I couldn't get over these stories. Oh my God, these are most amazing stories. And I didn't even know how to say the F word. But boy, I'll tell you, I'm really good at it today. No problems. And what happened while I was in this treatment center is I had a jitter house romance. Where sick falls in love with sick and walks off into happy destiny. We walked off into happy destiny for 58 days. And I was brought back into that treatment center more dead than alive. I had been beaten up and numerous and sundry other things. And I'd reached that place in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that talks about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Because now I knew what the problem was. The problem was sobriety. I can't live with myself sober. And that was always it. I knew what I was doing to my kids. And when I was sober, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand me. And what was happening, the facts of my life that day, sober, the facts of my life was my daddy was dying from colon cancer in Henderson Hospital in Abilene, Texas. My husband was 100% disabled from the military, and he was about 80 or 90% bedridden. He was so ill. He had gotten congestive heart failure at age 36. And we don't know, but my sons and I believe that he was a victim of Agent Orange. And because he was an advisor in Da Nang at the end of his career. He came out of the cockpit and he went in as an advisor. And he was there when all the end of it, when they were using all that. And we don't know, but he was so ill. And I was unable to take care of him. And the facts of my life is I knew what I had done to my children. I could not stand what I had done to my children. I couldn't face me. I just absolutely could not face me. And what happened was, as I sat there that 7 days in that detox, and when that detox was over, I left that treatment center, and I got a bottle of scotch, and I got a bottle of Valium, and I checked into a motel. I don't believe that there's anybody in this room that doesn't have an angel in your life. An angel that we have been rescued so many times. God's grace just follows. God's grace is all over his kids. And what happened for me is I had this woman in my life, and she knew nothing about the disease of alcoholism, but she loved me. And she said that day that something came over her. And today I know that something was God working through my life, through her. And she drove around until she found my car parked outside this motel. And what had happened is that I hadn't shut the door all the way. I had just closed the door. It hadn't latched. And she pushed that door open, and she called 911. And on April the 8th of 1977, I was pronounced dead on arrival in a hospital in Bedford, Texas. By God's grace, I stand here today. By God's grace, we sit here today. It's all by God's grace. Because we're people who should not be alive, but we're alive. By God's grace, we sit here sober, sane, and most of us in our right minds. We get to sit here and enjoy each other's fellowship and have fun. And you know what? If it weren't fun, I couldn't stay. We get to gather up and have fun. This is the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know why I'm here today. My story is that of many, many other people's. How do how do these things happen? And here we are. I'm standing here telling you a story that I had a piece of paper for years that said DOA. And I carried it around till it just fell apart. I just didn't have the sense to get it laminated. Because I sometimes I don't ever want to forget that. I don't want to ever forget where alcohol took me. I don't ever want to forget that. And what happened for me is if you try to commit suicide, it's no different than in 2016, was no different in 1977. You try to commit suicide, you are going to get the attention of the authorities. And what happened for me is my husband got a court order from a Fort Worth judge that said I was a detriment to myself and others, and I was court committed to treatment after I had been put in a psychiatric hospital for 72 hours. And I entered that treatment center on April the 11th of 1977. And by God's grace and this program, I haven't had a drink since. The big book of The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about great events will come to pass. That's the great fact for us all. And I probably got about 10 minutes. I don't know when I started, but I've got about 10 minutes left. And I'd just like to share with you my great events that have come to pass. I ended up hitting a bottom in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous behind relationship and sex. By God's grace, again, I didn't drink. But I brought so much shame to myself. And what had happened is I had been friends with Dave. I've known Dave since I was 6 months sober, and we were friends. And Dave came to me when I was 3.5 years sober, and he was 4.5 years sober. And he says, Polly, I want to marry you. He says, but you got to get something straight. I don't want to have an affair with you. I want to marry you. And things like that aren't supposed to happen to people like me. And this past October, just about a month ago, Dave and I were married 36 years. 2 alcoholics hooked up together. 36 years. Dave and I wanted to stay married. We didn't know anything about marriage. I'm Dave's 4th wife, if you heard him talk. And our Al-Anon friend likes to remind Dave, and you're the common denominator in all 4 of those marriages. And what happened for us, is that we wanted to stay married. Dave and I knew how to take a hostage, but we didn't know how to stay married. I was married for 22 years. I suffer. And he just kind of married. And so what happened is we went to people who were married, who had what we wanted, and we started doing what they did. And we had so much fun yesterday being able to talk to you guys about traditions in relationships, because someone told us about that. We don't have an original idea here, but somebody did that for us, brought us through the traditions so we could learn how to be married, and we could learn how to respect and love each other. Because I guarantee you, we didn't know. We didn't know how to do that. We were taught how to do that. Dave and I have, life's been in session. I mean, what happens is just because you're sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't mean that life's not in session. And for about the first 14 years of our marriage, it was just riding high. Everything was just fabulous. We were talking around in Alcoholics Anonymous. We were just having the best time. And in 1993, Dave lost his job. And wow, that was, what an order. I can't go through this. And Dave and I ended up losing our home. We ended up filing bankruptcy and all the stuff that goes along, because Dave did not work in his career again for 2 years. He had 2 minimum wage jobs. And in 1993, you didn't have unemployment for 2 years. I think it was about 6 weeks. And so here we were. And we ended up losing our job, losing our home, and all of that. And it was so shameful. And one of the things that we were 16 and 17 years sober. And I have 2 fabulous Franks in my life. My first AA sponsor, who was Frank Fitzpatrick, and another Frank by the name of Frank Honeycutt. And Frank Honeycutt, for those, I know there's some people in Las Vegas who'll know him, because he was like absolutely the finest man I have ever known. And I just said, I can't talk anymore. I'm not going to talk anymore. What will people think? And Frank looked at me and he said, it's none of your business what people think. The only thing is important, what people think of you. The only thing that's important is what you think of them. You can't afford any resentments. It's what you think of them. My AA, oh my God, excuse me. My AA sponsor, Dottie, had been through all kinds of adversity. And she says, Polly, God never brings us through things that we're not going to be able to share. Whatever that is, whatever is happening to you, God uses it. And the big book talks about that our dark past is our greatest asset, that no matter what happens to us, it's something that I'm going to get to share. Now, I didn't know that in 2008 that the bottom was going to fall out of the economy again, and I was going to have all kinds of women that I sponsored going through exactly what I went through in 1993, and I could assure them that they were going to live through it because I lived through it. You can live through bankruptcy. You can live through those things. And I am so grateful that I got to live through that. And I've had an opportunity to share it. Dave and I lost his oldest son 10 years ago. He was 9 years sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he died from lung cancer, which was a manifestation of AIDS. And we lost a child. Life's in session. Things happen. But we're in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the things that I'm sure of is that whatever happens, we got somebody who's walked ahead of us that can help us. One of the things that I'm just going to share a short story. We just buried one of my sponsee's daughter on Tuesday. And what happens is I have another sponsee, and they're best friends. And she lost her son a year ago. And what she did is she grabbed a hold of her sister, and she walked her through this. See, this is the kind of things that we get to do in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because whatever has happened to us, somebody has gone ahead of us and has had that same thing happen to them. That's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the opportunity to sponsor a lot of women. I don't have a clue what I do for them. The only thing I can tell you is I have a Bill Wilson. And left to my own devices, I'm going to be sitting in a corner in the fetal position because I am so depressed. But I have found an antidote for depression for me. And that's just find another woman to work with. When all else fails, find somebody to work with. And I know that that's what works for me. I don't know what I do for them, but I know they saved my life because when I get those phone calls, I get to get out of me. Because you see, I'm that woman on page 63 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm selfish, self-centered, self-seeking. That's who I am. I am selfish. And what I need to do in this program is I need to eliminate the self, get out of the self. And when I can get out of the self, and I can begin to do what Bill talks about in his story and begin to feel useful, then those are the things that happen. When I was 6.5 years sober, my youngest son came to me and he said, "Mom, I want what you have." 6.5 years before, I was supposed to attend a function at his school. And he said, "Don't you dare show up at my school because I am ashamed of you." And 6.5 years later, he wants what I have. And he is an active member in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My oldest son, tried to take his life many times. And I just thought I was going to die behind these two kids. I thought it would just absolutely kill me. Because my boys, here I get sober, and both of my sons are just tearing down their lives and trying to take their lives in various ways. And I just didn't get it. But by God's grace, my oldest son hasn't tried to hurt himself in about 16 years. These are miracles that we come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and we just follow the directions that are given us. We just get a sponsor. If you don't have a sponsor here today, get one. Just get a sponsor. And those of you, one of the things that I've never understood is why we interview sponsors in AA. That's not how we started. And if somebody's a newcomer, Just go tell them you sponsor them. They don't know any different. Just go tell them. You'll be going to meetings even if they don't say sober or if they don't even want you for a sponsor after a little bit. You'll be taking them to meetings. All I know is I get better by doing that and helps me. But these are the things that we get to do. My life has been so blessed by this program. My family have 5 grandchildren who've never seen me drink and just think I'm really hot. I'm a roller coaster riding grandma, and they just think I'm so hot. This is the things that we get to do in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know without a doubt that my life has been blessed. I want to just say one thing that I said yesterday. December the 5th, it's coming up on a year. My husband got lung cancer, and he had half his lung removed on December the 5th. And we've walked through this year lung cancer. We've walked through a blood clot in the heart. He's had some laser surgery on his back because he couldn't hardly walk. It's been a year. It has absolutely been a year. And I feel so honored. I couldn't take care of my first husband. I just wasn't capable. I was a practicing alcoholic. I was so into myself, there's no way that I could have sacrificed anything. But I was able, for the past 9 months, I was able to stay and be a caretaker to my husband and be able to care for him and to be able to love him and be there for him. And these are the things that I've learned in AA. Because you see, in and of myself, I can't do that. I'm too selfish. I'm too selfish to sacrifice myself in any way. But because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been given that gift. And every day I ask God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. Take away the bondage of self. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And by doing this program, one day at a time, we get a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I have truly been given the keys to the kingdom. And one of the things that I love to say is something my son says in his story. He says, I knew AA worked because I saw the transformation in my mother. God bless you.